Hi, this is Matt with State of Flux here with another one of my Godzilla reviews, this time discussing Godzilla versus the Smog monster. That's how I grew up knowing it. It is properly titled Godzilla versus Hedorah. Now, this is probably the last Jedi of the Showa-era Godzilla films, in that it is the most divisive. There are very firm decisions made and political leanings made with this film that you are either going to really gel with or you're going to be absolutely turned off by. I happen to adore this film, just as I adore The Last Jedi, but for very different reasons, obviously. This film is uniquely directed by Yoshimitsu Banno. This is his one-and-done Godzilla film, and truly kind of his one-and-done film. He was an assistant director of Akira Kurosawa's on films such as Hidden Fortress and Throne of Blood. Before getting this film, this was his big break movie, and the response to the movie was such that he didn't really work again for Toho Studios or any of the Godzilla movies until he kind of got the last laugh by coming over stateside and helping get the MonsterVerse started with 2014's Godzilla, and acts as executive producer on both that film, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong. However, he had passed away by the time those last two films had come out. But enough about his career. Let's focus on what he did when he had his turn at bat with Godzilla. I think there's a dankness to how these Godzilla movies look. They're very high-budgeted, you can tell, spectacle features that just kind of place a camera and have the monsters lumbering about, hitting each other. This is the first time we have anything artfully done with the Godzilla property since probably that first movie. There's interstitials where you see like little animated segments that kind of further the story along. There's text that appears on screen when it's trying to teach you things. There's a lot of uniqueness done with coloring, tinting of the film, and like light effects. And the introduction of Godzilla, I think, is his best introduction since that very first movie. When he shows up and you hear this like brum, brum, brum of the music playing, his Godzilla theme in this, which works uniquely in this film. I don't think it's as good as the traditional Godzilla theme that we got in many of the Honda films, but it is a good serviceable theme for him in this film. But his introduction against the orange sun of Japan as it is rising and or setting is fantastic. I absolutely love his introduction. And it's not only his introduction that is something special. The evil eyes of Hedorah was something that was unique. It's this little monster that you see in this pond early on, and then you see how this thing grows. I feel like this film actually had a hand in creating what ended up being Shin Godzilla. I'm firm in the belief that that filmmaker looked at this film as one of the inspirations, because every time you see Hedorah, she changes. Hedorah is female in the it's not outwardly stated, but in like behind the scenes information, Hedorah was always intended to be female. Every time you see her, she's evolving in some way. She is this is kind of a soft remake of the Blob. Like, what if Godzilla fights Blob? But then it has a focus on tackling a prominent issue that was in Japan at that era, which was industrialization and how that creates pollutants. This is Godzilla's war against pollutants, and it's kind of unique in that both of the monsters projected on this film, Godzilla and Hedorah, are man-made monsters. They may have been creatures that existed outside of their man-made properties, but man-made items are what accelerated what they became. Godzilla was awakened by the nuclear blast that rocked Japan and became this parable for nuclear warfare. Similarly, Hedorah was this little cosmic monster that came from a comet that grew with the pollution of the era of Japan. The sludge in the sea, the smog in the air, fed this creature until it became something unstoppable. And it's kind of unique in that pollution is something that's not controllable. You can choose not to pollute, but it's not something that you can aim anywhere, whereas nuclear power is. And it's kind of neat that Godzilla is the nuclear deterrent that is aimed at combating this monster. The allegories at play kind of work, and I think that this film, well, being made for children, it's one of the few films that does have a child protagonist in the Godzilla franchise. It doesn't talk down to children, which was something that I would argue that the previous film I was pretty critical of. This film is a tool to teach children about the dangers of pollution and showing you just how bad it is, like unapologetically. There are gross images in this film of what pollution burns can look like, what happens to fish in the sea when they encounter pollution, what happens to the sea itself, what happens to the city, the people. The child is confronted with these things and is trying desperately to stop Hedorah's growth. And I think that is something that is important for a young child to be sort of like socially conscious of pollution. And this film is a very effective tool. I think the allegories at play in this film are strongest, second only to that first Godzilla film. Yeah, this film, though I say, is not well liked. There are decisions made in this film that people didn't like. Much like Last Jedi, people didn't like Leia flying. People don't like that Godzilla flies in this film. He wraps his tail under him and he blasts his cosmic breath at the ground and like starts floating after Hedorah. That was a decision made by the filmmaker because he was just trying to figure out how Godzilla can match pace with this flying creature, and shot it both ways. He shot it once where Godzilla ran after it, and that looked just as silly, so he's like, whatever, we're going to have him fly. Personally, I don't care whether or not he flies. At that point, I'm invested in a monster movie about a giant nuclear lizard fighting a giant sludge monster. So the fact that one of them can fly, when traditionally that's not something we've seen before, I'm like, whatever. It happens in the last 10 minutes, so I was with the movie up until that point, and it's not something that it was so like untenable for me to wrap my head around that I had to like turn the film off. I'm fine with it. It's a silly Godzilla movie to begin with. That's something that people are often critical of. The commercialism of Godzilla in the film, i.e. the kid playing with Godzilla toys, and you see Godzilla toys at market in the background and several other scenes, is problematic. Again, that was something people criticized with The Last Jedi. There's a lot of commonalities between these two films. People didn't like the playing with the toys at the end of that movie either. I like that the kid is smart and an active participant in trying to educate the audience, and is if this movie is made for kids and you are a kid, you can latch onto this kid who is trying to better himself and sees a problem with the world and is acknowledging that there's a problem, but is trying to find a solution to said problem. That's an important message for me. I like that, and it's leaps and bounds better than Godzilla's Revenge, which came out 2 years prior. I have very few qualms with this film. I dig the messaging it's saying about pollution and stuff. I think Hedorah, just in general, is a phenomenal looking monster, and I like the monster fights. They're different in this film than they are in the previous ones. This is a refreshing breath of fresh air into the franchise. However, because of critical and public response to the film at the time, Godzilla kind of took a step back and started making more movies throughout the rest of the Showa era that would be more reflective of Godzilla versus Ghidorah or something like that, where it's Godzilla versus a monster or two monsters, very little political messaging at play, and I think ultimately Godzilla during the Showa era suffered from that. This film is where it's at, and it's something that I think people have kind of come around as time went on. Roger Ebert called this the best Godzilla movie. I wouldn't go that far, but I think it is second best of the Showa era films, without question. And it's something that I look forward to whenever I'm doing a rewatch, or if I just want to pop in a fun Godzilla movie that has lots of Godzilla at play. That he has the most screen time in this than any of the back half Showa era films, and it has something to like stimulate the brain with its allegorical comparatives to real world problems. So yeah, I like this film quite a bit. This is a firm 3.5-star film for me out of 4. And next week we are gonna watch Godzilla battle Gigan, I believe. So yeah, this was the first of the Godzilla Versus series that you would get for the much of the remainder of his entire career. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of this movie in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Peace.